All right, welcome to Halitics. It's a Monday. It is not an Arlen Monday. I repeat, for those of you who are disappointed, as I am, that Arlen is not able to join us today. He has some family business to attend to and just could not make it. And of course, we totally understand. It's kind of bad timing, only because the election, of course, being tomorrow. I would have loved to have gotten Arlen's take. And I know he's kind of a little anxious about it. The result, he's nervous, like so many other people in my life are very, very worried that Donald Trump will prevail. And I'm worried that Donald Trump will prevail, but I'm equally worried that Kamala, let me get her name right, of course, Kamala Harris will prevail. I mean, I just don't see any light there with either one, really. You can go into a couple of discrete areas and say, well, Trump doesn't seem that awful here, and Harris is actually not bad there. But when you look at the lethal seriousness of the problems we face, the idea that we have to choose between these two pretty close to morally and intellectually bankrupt options is just, it tells you how bad things are, right? I mean, that this is what we're looking at. I don't know that I can go back in time. Well, yeah, 2016, right? Have we had two such bad candidates before? Yeah, 2016, although I think at that point we couldn't have really concluded Trump was as bad as he turned out to be. We could not have. He proved to be a bad president, a very, very bad president in a lot of ways. And obviously Hillary was not an acceptable choice either. So I think we could say 2016 was probably another election where the two choices, the two options were just that bad. If you want to join me, 240-242-5646, I'd love to get your thoughts, your take on all of this. I'm sure many of you who are watching either now or on delay have strong feelings about what I'm saying, and like to know what they are. We really do need to discuss this. This isn't the kind of issue that anybody, even myself, even as much as I like to think, to believe I'm well informed and I've got the right ideas and I've thought through all this, this is too important for anyone to take the lead and just be dispensing wisdom as we on YouTube and other venues, we pundits often do. Even though there's an election tomorrow, the most important position, the most powerful person in the world will be, a new person will be sitting in the seat come January, and obviously that probably more. Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm just not going to let go of what the American government is doing with the Israeli government, and that is eradicating a people from the planet, taking them off the planet, just saying they're off the map. 33 more killed as death toll nears 43,400. Just keeps going up and up and up and up. I got into a Facebook dispute. Someone says, oh, they've only killed 2%. That's hardly a genocide. So my response was, well, how many do they get to kill before? How many Palestinians do they get to kill? Does Israel get to kill before it's a genocide? It's quite an argument. There's no question at this point. Israel is just prolonging the carnage to destroy and kill as many people as it possibly can. And again, the numbers are woefully understated, almost certainly. We just don't know, but doctors have said it's in the hundreds of thousands. So if you get up into the hundreds of thousands, you're looking at 5, 6, 7, 10% of the population, maybe more. Does that count as a genocide? At what point do you say, okay, it's a genocide? People say, well, it's Hamas that's genocidal because they killed they want, according to the theory, according to their charter, which no one's read in the Arabic, no one really knows exactly the meaning. No one on the West, people who insist that this is Hamas declaring it's going to eradicate Israel. Actually, I think a lot of scholars said, no, that's really not what they're saying. They're saying, yeah, there shouldn't be a country called Israel. There needs to be a country from the river to the sea that's democratic, that includes all people. That's not genocide. What's genocide is when you wipe an entire group, an ethnic group, off the map, which is what Israel is doing. So for those of you who say, well, they haven't killed enough people, how many would qualify? At what point does it become, in fact, genocide? And even in your more, I guess, higher bar, what would qualify? So the story yesterday, yesterday, 33 more killed by Israel, and over 120 total through the weekend. And this is, again, with the active support, the full, unwavering backing of the Harris-Biden administration. So, that's just exactly the reason, the specific answer to those who say, well, why don't you vote for Harris? Well, this is exactly why. And let me see if I can get that number right, because I was fiddling around. So there we go. So let me give you the official number. This is as close as we can get to confirmed. And obviously the numbers are thousands and tens of thousands and maybe 100,000 plus higher than this. But what we have now is 43,374. That's according to Anadolu Ajansi. I did the numbers. That's 115 people Friday to Sunday. So Israel killed 50 children in 48 hours. So over one child per hour. Does that count for those of you who say, oh, it's too strong, you shouldn't call it genocide? Is that enough for you? I mean, what again, if you think I'm overhyping what Israel's doing or being hyperbolic in some way, let me know, what you would call a true genocide. 240-242-5646. Got a video. We are going to talk about the election. I center the plight of American victims, Israeli victims, because really there's no daylight, is there, between the two? The most powerful Democrat, short of the president at this point, probably Hakeem Jeffries, maybe it's Chucky Schumer. Both are from New York. Schumer, a New York Jew who's clearly always been a staunch supporter of Israel. And Jeffries, I think, has referred to Israel as the sixth borough. So these are the most powerful Democrats there are, and they're right there with Israel. There's no daylight between them and Israel. So I don't, think that it's not in any way unfair. It's not in any way an overstatement to say, yes, this is the U.S. policy. This is the Democratic policy. They're complicit. They're active abettors of. They're accessories during the fact of genocide. And that's exactly where we are. All right, I want to play for you. This is a TikTok video. I think I was just doing some, browsing, what have you, and I came across this. It took me a little bit of time to get this up, and that's why, to record it, and there may be a glitch in there. In fact, there is a glitch in here. That's why I was a little bit, maybe 30 seconds, 40, 60 seconds late getting on the program today. Here's Bishan from Gaza on the election, and something you should think about next time you tell me, those of you who do, that somehow I'm privileged and I don't really get the harm that a Trump presidency would do that I'm being, deliberately oblivious to how bad Trump is and don't really understand the way the world works. And that's the only reason why I'm voting for Jill, or I voted for, in fact, Jill Stein. Well, let's hear what Bashan has to say about that.
This is Bisan from Gaza. It's been a year started, but I'm still alive. And the American politics is not just for Americans. Seems that the upcoming American elections will affect the non-American people and maybe the world as well. And of course, the most and the main affected area in the whole world will be Palestine, because simply the American administration has been arming Israel since the beginning of the genocide and even before with the most destructive and the newest weapons ever. In addition to the political and diplomatic support that reached even to the use of the veto several times against many ceasefire resolutions. For Palestinians and people of the globe, the US is just as involved as Israel in the genocide of Gaza. But let's see what are the people of Gaza saying about the American elections.
All right, we'll get to that in just a moment, but I just want to reiterate what Bashan said there, which is that for the people of Gaza, the people who are experiencing the complete destruction of their lives, their loved ones, their homes, themselves being completely destroyed, they recognize the United States is just as responsible as Israel. All right, so we are being killed while the world watches. Because they, meaning Israel, meaning the United States, give Israel bombs. So now this gentleman is talking about why, what his view is on the election coming up. And the question, could the winner change the course of the war, as they call it, the slaughter, the genocide? No, it won't change anything because they all speak against us, meaning Trump and Harris, obviously. Whether it's Kamala Harris or whoever, they all cheer for Israel. Whatever Israel wants, kill the Palestinians. Not even one bit will there be any change as a result of the election in terms of what happens to us. It will only be in favor of the Zionist side. For the past 30 years, regardless who became president, they have always prioritized Israeli interests. And you could make an argument, okay, well, when it was Obama versus Bush or something, or Obama versus McCain, you could say, well, there's other issues. There isn't a full-blown genocide going on. Now, some Palestinians would have said, oh, yes, there was. The genocide has been going on for 75 years. And I'm not saying they're wrong, but in terms of the scale, the scope of the harm, the killing, the damage, it's really obviously at the up to 11 right now during the Harris-Biden administration with the full support of the Harris-Biden administration. So I don't know how you can look at what's happening and say, oh, it's okay to vote for Kamala Harris, or you have some moral obligation to vote for Kamala Harris. Our priority is ending this war and the genocide. Whether it's Biden, Harris, or Trump, they all support the complete invasion. And there's a lot more of this, in this vein. I don't need to play all of it. I thought it was extraordinarily powerful, and it needed to be heard. It needed to be played. So that is why I did it. I will finish with Bashan because she, so we're skipping a little bit of this, but what she had to say really was just, I think it's what we have to acknowledge, what we have to understand when we make decisions here about which of the two genocidal parties we're going to support. There isn't a moral choice between Trump and Harris. There simply isn't. The moral imperative is to vote for Jill Stein.
In my opinion, both parties praise and support the Zionism and the Zionist project in the Palestinian lands, which is the Israeli occupation. Both parties are different faces for the same coin, and the goal is to annihilate the Palestinian cause and to end the Palestinian existence in the Palestinian lands. So, personally, I don't rely on the American elections to make any difference. I rely on the free people of the world and the Palestinian people to make this change and to stop this genocide.
I mean, I just wish they could. I wish they had the power to do it. By the way, I see a call came in. I do apologize, caller. Again, got that issue with the ringer that doesn't always ring, and this is a glitch I have determined. I'm going to see if I can get you back. This is indeed a glitch that I have figured out results from our friends at Google. And I don't want to be too harsh on Google because, after all, without Google, I couldn't do this. I couldn't come close. I mean, in a lot of ways. But it is frustrating when the phone rings, but it doesn't ring. It's frustrating when I don't hear it ring. So if you want to call now, I just tested it and it is working. That's one of the many little things I need to do if I'm going to have yeah, you can hear it ringing now. So hopefully we'll get our caller on if they can make it. Maybe I shouldn't do that. Just bring them out of the blue. But I really want to talk to you because I have my own views. I've been very clear about what they are. And I know many of you, many of whom I have great, great respect for, have different ones. Well, I don't think they're answering, so I'm just going to hang up on that. I have been saying, I said over the past few days that I've been on the show doing the program, maybe it's better to say it, the past few programs, my view has been that Kamala Harris was, had an advantage that in terms of the polling, that she was likely to win. And I cited several Michigan polls, especially where she had 4 or 5, I think a 6-point lead. Maybe there was even a 6-point lead in PA as well from a reputable pollster. Maybe it was CNN even. I don't have it all in front of me right now. This was in, and I also responded to Peter B. Collins on Halitics. It was great to have a Peter B. Collins sighting who was asking me about this. So over the weekend, this poll came out Saturday evening, and to me, this kind of was the height of Kamala surge. To use the right word. I really view this as a surge. At this point, when this poll came out from the Des Moines Register, the gold standard, according to Oracle Silver, the best pollster in the business is Ann Selzer, and she has gotten an awful lot right. She saw the Trump surge in 2016 way before everyone else. She had Trump up by something like 6 points in Iowa when the other pollsters were calling it a dead heat in the Hawkeye state. In 2020, she had a pretty favorable poll published just before that election, again towards Trump, favorable to Trump. And the race proved to be much closer, although ultimately Biden prevailed, but it was much closer than many thought it would be. So Selzer has been right. She's been right, and she's been right. And what she is saying is, now that it is Harris in red. They say ruby red. They call Iowa a ruby red state. I guess it'd be all both senators, both U.S. senators, and now the governor are all, I believe, Republicans. It's gone for the Republicans since 2008, the last Democrat to win a presidential race in in Iowa. The last Democrat to win a contest, a race against Republican presidential race was Barack Obama, obviously the caucuses. But in terms of the race against Republican, Obama won Iowa in 2008. Since then, it's moved hard right. I still wouldn't call it ruby red, but okay, they know better there in Iowa and Des Moines. And according to this Iowa poll from the DMR, Harris is ahead. So I saw that. I'm like, she's going to win. That was my immediate, I'm like, she's going to win this thing because, and I have like I said, I don't care. I'm horrified at the prospect of a Kamala Harris presidency. I'm horrified at the prospect of a Donald Trump presidency. So I'm trying, I believe I'm pretty objective. But, and I posted, I said, she's going to probably win. I think she will. Made some people pretty happy who usually don't like what I have to say, but they kind of agree there. And if you looked at the Real Clear Politics betting average, which I was looking at pretty obsessively at that point, and I continue to, Harris's disadvantage, which had widened to, I think, well over 15 points or so, or maybe even more. He was up 63, 64, 65 points in some markets, and she was down in the 30s. It narrowed to 9.9. That's early Sunday morning. You see it there, November 3rd. I was surprised she didn't take the advantage at that point. I thought, hey, wait a sec. You got a great pollster. You've seen more and more polls moving towards Harris. How could she not have a lead? But I figured, well, it's just these indicators are slow. They don't want to jump too quickly. So that's why. If I were a bettor, I would have bet a lot of money at that point, seeing the spread remained, where you put down 45 and you get 100 back if you bet on Harris. Or you get, that's basically how it works. You get your 45 and then you get another 55 back, something of that sort. You have to bet 55 to get 45. Here you get 45 to get 55. So I would have, if I was forced to bet, I would certainly have bet on Harris. But, and polls came out too. Let me just look at these polls, show them to you. So, these are the national polls. So despite, I thought that, like I said, it would have jumped more. And Harris would have become the favorite. But that didn't happen. And the reason it didn't happen is because the national polls didn't move. Polls that came out Saturday, yesterday, the 3rd, except for the ABC Ipsos poll, didn't move in Harris's direction at all. Alice Intel is considered as good a pollster, I suppose, as Selzer. He has Trump winning. He's had Trump ahead. They've had Trump ahead the whole time. Tip has been pretty much down the middle. That's why. Even the 3-point lead that ABC Ipsos gives Harris doesn't really move the needle much in her direction because Democrats are supposed to win by 3 points in the popular vote to win the electoral vote. So that's why it didn't shift. The favorite didn't really change. And then more polling from reputable pollsters from the New York Times, tied in Pennsylvania, tied in Michigan. This is yesterday. Tied in Wisconsin. Or no, I'm sorry. Of course not. No, Harris ahead in Wisconsin. But again, that's not enough. Harris needs to win those states. So that's why Trump remains a slight favorite. And in fact, this morning, you saw just a little bit of a tick up for him in the markets. So again, at least Vegas and the Real Clear, the 538 average have not moved to favor Harris. So what do I make of all that? What's my response? I think they're wrong. I think I honestly, I could, of course I could be wrong. And probably I'm wrong. And I'm certainly not going to bet, nor would I tell anyone to bet. But I think Harris probably wins. I'm less confident than I was Saturday evening, but I do. I think she A lot of the early vote that's been banked suggests that what we've seen is many more women voting than men, and there's an enormous gender gap. Women seem to greatly prefer Harris for understandable reasons. I'd be somewhat surprised if Trump went. He might, of course, but I would be surprised. By the way, 240-242-5646 if you want to join me. And also, I know people say, oh, don't believe the polls. The polls are a gimmick or they're a scam and all that. We don't need them. We probably don't need the polls. Agreed. We don't need the polls, but I've got them. I'm going to use them. They are a very, very valuable tool for prognosticating. That doesn't mean we should have them. I wouldn't be so offended if they just went away completely. Not in the least. But we've got them. So, and I think there's value to them because, for example, in 2000, the polls showed Gore should win. He didn't. A lot of us believed then. I certainly did. And I'm still very skeptical that George W. Bush really should have won in terms of the electoral count. That I wonder about those voting machines in Ohio and other places that were very, very, iffy in terms of the results. Just didn't match what exit polls told you and what the polls before the election told you. And I would note further, Gore lost because of Florida, so he should have won anyway. He had the majority or the plurality of votes. That's all true. But even in the states where W was declared the winner, those numbers are sketchy, and they could never be verified through a paper ballot count or anything else. The good news is, despite the poo-pooing, the complete dismissal by the corporate media of any likely shenanigans, their inability to even address the issue, the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, they all, oh no, there's no, it's on the up and up. A lot of steps were taken to safeguard the vote, to have more integrity in elections. Was it enough? Probably not. But there were there were steps taken, and I think we're more likely to have an accurate election day and election night and election week count than we would have if it weren't for all of the complaints, scandal that accompanied the announced results in 2000. So I think the polls actually really do have value. They kind of tell us where we think we are, and if where we turn out to be is very, very different, then we have the right to, and we should, and ask a lot of pointed questions. So I don't reject the polls as useless or invalid or unimportant. They're all of those things. One of the reasons that I think many of you are so adamant that I needed to vote for, that I'm somehow betraying the American people, that I made a terrible decision voting for Jill Stein. I think many of you believe that because you accept the version of Donald Trump that much of the media provides. A cartoonish, buffoonish, violent, dangerous person. And I don't think that's completely an unfair characterization. He's pathetic is what he is, in my opinion. He says a lot of things very, very wrong, that are very dangerous even. But the media exaggerates nevertheless. They still present him in the worst possible light, and often in a dishonest light. So let's go through that real quick. Here you have the Washington Post this morning, or maybe it was yesterday. This live update's 9 minutes ago, so I'm guessing this is this morning. Trump says he doesn't mind someone shooting at journalists at rally. He doesn't mind someone shooting at journalists. And this got a lot of media play, that Trump was calling for shooting journalists. That's not what he actually said. What he said wasn't great. I'm not defending it. I think a lot of people would say, well, hell, why are you even admit it was a bad thing that Trump said? Well, it wasn't a good thing that he said, but he didn't say shoot at journalists. That's not quite what he said. And I think accuracy is really important. If the media is trying to spin you, if the media is trying to paint Trump as it does, and as so many see him as this utterly irredeemable monster, you should know that that's what the media is trying to do. Here's what Trump actually said in Pennsylvania.
I have a piece of glass over here, and I don't have a piece of glass there.
So he's referring, of course, to the bulletproof glass that they put there because of threats against him at rallies and the fact that there was a shot. He was shot, actually, in Pennsylvania at a rally.
And I have this piece of glass here, but all we have really over here is the fake news, right?
So he's pointing at the journalists and claiming, yeah, we're the fake news. All right, there it pops up. I hate that.
To get me, somebody would have to shoot through the fake news. And I don't mind that so much.
So he's saying he doesn't mind if they shoot through them to get at him. That's what he said. He doesn't say shoot at the media. He's saying if you want to get me, God, I can't stand the way those pop-ups. See, this is why I should just record them, but it's so much extra work and I don't have the time for that. All right, yeah, so just a little digression why you have to see those little squares there, or the rectangles on the left side of your middle left of your screen there. He's saying, yeah, you have to shoot through them, not shoot at them. And it's different because he's kind of saying, I'm the one who would be the target, but if I'm targeted, you know what? They're so bad, that media, I don't even care. It's not quite what the media presents it, is it? By the way, if you disagree, go ahead and call. You could just say, oh, well, Hal, of course, he's still saying shoot the media, shoot the media. He didn't say that, though. He doesn't say shoot the media. And that's the end of that clip. So you can see it. He is being shaded by the Washington Post, and other journals did that. So the cover, let's just show that one more time, which isn't true. Trump says he doesn't mind someone shooting at journalists at rally. That's not what he said. He said, if you want to hit me, if you want to get me, then you have to shoot through the journalists to get to me. Subtle difference, but a meaningful difference nevertheless. And the Post, because the media is very shrewd, they're very keen. These are smart people. You have to be a good writer. You have to be, know how to spin to become a writer at one of these papers, and you make a pretty good living. It's pretty good work if you can get it, to be perfectly honest. The Washington Post on that front page headline there does change it a little bit. So although the main headline says it's okay, he doesn't mind calls. What did he say? Calls for them to shoot at journalists. In the actual sub-headline, Hannah Knowles acknowledges, now she probably didn't write that headline. She acknowledges Trump said he wouldn't mind if an assassin had to shoot through the assembled media to get me. So that's what he said. And he was just trying to, obviously he was trying to be somewhat amusing. Do I think it's funny? No. Do I think that it's dangerous rhetoric? I do. But it's not what the Washington Post spun it, which is, I don't mind if someone shoots at a journalist at my rally. That's not what he said. And you can see there's a distinction. Here's another way, the same basic theme, right? Trump's violent. Trump likes guns. Trump wants to kill his political enemies, whether they're journalists or politicians. If they're against Trump, he wants them shot. So Reuters reporting on what Trump said to she was fired from Fox News, Tucker Carlson. So what Trump said about Liz Cheney to Tucker Carlson last week is now being investigated by an Arizona prosecutor on the ground that Trump, maybe he called for violence. He said Cheney should face gunfire. I think that was spun by some media. I don't have the clip here, or I don't have the the headline, but I've heard people say, and maybe they, because that's how lies make it around the world before the truth puts its pants on. But I've heard people say that Trump was calling for a firing squad for Liz Cheney. Well, that's not what he said. And I also hat tip to Glenn Greenwald because he reported on this. Now, Greenwald gives Trump more benefit of the doubt than even I do. I don't like Trump, but I'm trying to explain to you why I don't believe the media caricature of Trump as the orange monster who should, he's so bad. I mean, this is the argument, right? This is the argument from CNN. This is the argument from The Nation. It doesn't matter how bad Kamala is. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because it's Donald Trump. You have to vote against Donald Trump. Donald Trump's calling for journalists to be shot. Donald Trump is calling for Liz Cheney to face a firing squad. So what does he actually say? Let's play it.
And I don't blame him for sticking with his daughter, but his daughter is a very dumb individual, very dumb.
By the way, I want to stop it right there. Trump, he really is pathetic. I don't think Liz Cheney is stupid. I really don't. I mean, she speaks you can be a good speaker, right? Actors, there are stupid actors, but they speak, I think by all accounts, and if you want to sue me, go ahead. And I don't know this person and I don't know it personally, but from what I understand, Harrison Ford is not that bright. I don't think Clark Gable was particularly intelligent, but they are good actors. They're good. Well, Harrison Ford's alive. They're good actors. They are able to express emotion. They can, respond to directors' cues and other actors very well, but they're not that intelligent. I don't think Ronald Reagan, he wasn't a great actor either, but I don't think he was very smart. Liz Cheney is articulate. That doesn't prove she's intelligent, but I've listened to her. I don't agree with Trump that she's dumb, but this is who Trump is. He just insults. He's willy-nilly. He's pathetic, and he's not very bright. He's not an intelligent man by any means. But listen to what he says about Cheney.
She's a radical war hawk. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay?
He's saying she's somebody who's always calling for war. Right? She's pro-Ukraine war. She said one of her big reasons, I think, did she speak at the Democratic convention? I think she did. She did. She said one of the reasons is because she and her father, remember one of the architects of the incredibly destructive, harmful Iraq war that made us all less safe and led to over 1 million deaths in Iraq. So her father also endorsed Kamala. And the two, well, according to Liz, the reason the two of them supported her is because her foreign policy, incredibly bellicose, pro-Ukraine war, we need the most lethal fighting force ever, all in for genocide, unwavering in her support for Israel. That foreign policy would fit right in the Cheney-Bush administration. And these are the most hawkish people ever, and they support Harris. So Cheney is spot on Trump is spot on when he says, hey, she's a war hawk. She's a warmonger. That's what he's saying. And then he said, and I'm going to play it again, you want to be all pro-war? Well, why the hell aren't you the one putting on a uniform and going out and fighting a war?
And I don't blame him for sticking with his daughter, but his daughter is a very dumb individual, very dumb. She's a radical war hawk. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. When the guns are trained on her face. They're all war hawks when they're sitting in Washington in a nice building saying, oh, gee, let's send 10,000 troops right into the mouth of the enemy.
Yeah, he's just saying she's a chicken hawk. Just like her dad. Her dad never served in Vietnam. He was all in for that war, but he didn't serve. So, again, Trump's rhetoric is could certainly be improved. He certainly demonstrates, to my way of thinking, he's not fit to be president. But he didn't call for her to face a firing squad. He didn't call for Liz Cheney to be shot. He said, if you want to be all in for wars, Liz, why don't you go put on that uniform and go put that gun over your shoulder? He didn't call for journalists to be shot at. He said, hey, you want to get me? You got to go through the journalists. And you know what? I wouldn't mind given the kind of media attention I get. We got a caller. Caller, who is this?
Yeah, hi, Hal. This is Imugi.
Hey, Imugi, how are you? I still have trouble with your name, even though I've been practicing it. What's going on?
Yeah, everyone calls me emoji. I was just talking with my mother, who she's a volunteer for Indivisible. She's a very, very vote blue, no matter who type of lady. Really nice lady. But she was telling me exactly that thing. She's like, can you believe that Trump, was talking about killing Liz Cheney? And I just told her that actually, when I heard the clip on NPR out of context, I kind of thought, oh yeah, this sounds like some violent rhetoric. That's probably worthy of being condemned. Then I heard the whole context, and I'm like, this is less provocative than what Bob Dylan said in his song "Masters of War." So it's really sad that that we're in a situation where we just, we can't be honest about people's rhetoric and what's the truth. I think that the way that the media over kind of gaslights us regarding Trump is something that's really helped him. The hyperbolized demonizing of Trump it's like the boy who cried wolf. Like, anyone who might be willing to consider supporting him, they have plenty of ammunition, plenty of reason to believe that anything the mainstream media says about him should be ignorable.
Right. That's exactly correct. And, they overdo it. And I'm not saying Trump's great. I vote for Trump. But the problem we run into is when we say, well, he didn't really say it. He's not quite as bad as you paint him, is then you're defending him. You support him. No, we've got two choices. The argument is there's two choices and we have to choose one of them. And I'm saying to you, no, we don't. And it's not like Trump is quite as awful as the media portrays him. And at the same time, Harris is a lot worse than you are generally getting in your feed.
Exactly. Nuance is something that seems very, 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 I don't know. I guess nuance isn't acceptable. It's, people probably assume that it just pollutes the waters. They want everything to be simple black and white. I spent the weekend with my father, who is actually extremely conservative Trump supporter. And they were just talking all these Fox News, basically, what I would consider largely conspiracy theories. And I made sure to be diplomatic about it. I was able to kind of, gain some goodwill by joining in with him on attacking the Democratic Party for their lies and corruption. And then I just made sure to plant the seeds of saying, the media that I trust, the one way that I can feel like I'm getting some sort of source of information that's a sense that it's kind of reliable or that I might be able to put more trust into it, is if they demonstrate that they're willing to criticize, quote unquote, their own side. And that's just something that you almost never see among either of the, mainstream or even independent media, really.
Well, you can criticize the Democrats from the right. You just can't criticize them from the left. So you could get a conservative Democrat like Josh Gottheimer, a super hard right Zionist Democrat like Gottheimer, saying that he thinks that there was the pause, right? There was like a week where we didn't deliver the most lethal, the biggest bombs to Israel, that this was a terrible thing, but thank God that Biden saw the light. So you can really criticize the Democrats from the right. It's just you can't. Although Bernie, to his credit, he will criticize Biden and Harris down then for their the pro-Israel, pro-Zionist position, but that's the only place he will. And he even says, yeah, but Trump's worse, right? He will immediately pivot. Trump's worse. So that's what we get. Yeah. We get very little, and it's dishonest and it's spin.
Absolutely. And I've been hearing slightly different topic. I've been hearing people talk about, there's this line that's often brought up about, just vote the lesser of two evils, and then we'll push them left. Somebody even sort of paraphrased or quoted AOC says, we should vote for the person that we want to fight against. And I kind of bought that line a little bit in 2020. I still voted Green, but I thought, yeah, I'd rather have Biden as the person to be fighting against. Maybe it's a strange way to think about it, but I almost think about Democrats as more of like the final boss for some sort of progressive or I guess Bernie-esque, like if we're going to have a sort of revolutionary reform type effort, then Republicans, obviously we need to make them way less relevant, but then we don't stop and celebrate because the Democrats are in power. They're actually the bigger obstacle to what we're trying to achieve, even though.
Well, and Imugi, I did vote for Joe Biden because there were several things that, for me, the biggest problem with Trump of all was the treatment of immigrants. Not that the Democrats have been good, but I felt it was just beyond what I could accept, the way he separated the families. But I'm willing to. I don't question your vote for Howie Hawkins in that race. I would just note that the argument, well, we want to choose our enemy, I think is incredibly disingenuous, because the Democrats who put that forward, once they've, quote, chosen, unquote, their enemy, they go along with their enemy. They do what their enemy wants. They carry water for their, quote, enemy if they're in the same party. They very rarely challenge. AOC consistently defended Biden. So they're full of crap. It's not like they're loyal opposition. They're basically loyal go along, get along when it's their party.
Yeah, this was a comment that I saw, I believe, on Reddit, and I told the person, I call BS. When did AOC act like, she was fighting against, where is that spirit? Just even rhetorically, there's not even a sort of abstract, proposal for then we'll mobilize behind these NGOs or this sort of, specific campaign for this policy. They're not even talking about that at this point. They're not even throwing out rhetorical bones.
Imugi, I'm going to let you go in a moment, but I just had two quick comments for you to respond to, and I'll put them together and then you respond. One, I was just going over the story from Arizona where I guess Trump was on the Tucker Carlson show, must have been recorded in Arizona because that's where he's being investigated, maybe not, for allegedly calling for violence against Liz Cheney. And when you read the actual summary, the headline from Reuters is very kind of, again, makes you excited, provocative. But the actual text, when you read it, you're like, wait, he's being investigated because he suggests a prominent critic should face gunfire in combat. Then they acknowledge it was in combat, and it was in context of she's always calling for wars. So I'm saying, you want to go to war? You go, you face the gunfire. I mean, when you read that, you realize how absurd the whole argument that he should be prosecuted for it is. The other quote I just wanted you to comment on, I don't know if you need to comment on that, you can though, is from Brianna Joy Gray, one of my favorites. This is what she put on Twitter. I'm at least as afraid of what Democrats will do with a genocidal mandate if they win as I am Donald Trump. If Dems run full bore on genocide and face no consequences, God help us all. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I have a soft spot for Brianna Joy Gray myself. I do question. I think she's pulling out the big guns. I guess she's always been very somewhat cautious about like the optics and like how would sort of normies perceive the messaging that's being put out, and I guess she's like caring less and less these days, which is understandable. I mean, I agree with her, and I agree with kind of your take on that the news,
the Trump, the challenge to Trump legally for saying Cheney should be in combat if she's so pro-war.
We end up like moving so far away from the actual like source of what the news is being about that the news just becomes about the news being about the news, and we kind of lose our way as far as and definitely we should be celebrating and encouraging people to debunk BS whenever possible. But I guess the one thing I might say is I feel like the word genocide, even though according to the definition of genocide, according to certain levels of international law, is applicable in the case of Israel, I hesitate using it sometimes just because that's not I don't want to have a semantical argument. So, I might just say, war crimes or wanton mass murder, or I don't know. There's all sorts of other
atrocities is a good one.
Yeah.
Pogroms. I totally get what you're saying. I do. I hear that, and I used to be pretty judicious when I use the word genocide. I just think at this point, when you see for me, when I see the images of a completely wasted land, when I see the children, when I read the story of the children being shot at and killed, that to me, it's really not, you can't legitimately dispute it at this point. But I get what you're saying. It does kind of force people to choose sides. When you may lose some people, you might persuade. And I think that's a very fair point that you make.
Real quick, you can maybe, continue on this if you want, but it's interesting that many people are saying, even some maybe Muslims who never would have voted for Trump or the Republicans previously, they're deciding based on the optics and the knowledge that they, have access to, apparently, that they truly seem to believe that Trump is the peace candidate. And the Democrats aren't responding to this, and Democratic supporters don't seem to be responding to this in the sense of denying that their party is not the pro-war party, that they aren't becoming more and more sort of acceptable of, being the hawks, even
full war, solving international problems with war. It seems that has become, the Democrats have become that party. Amogi, thank you so much. Have a great, I was going to say weekend, but obviously it's Monday. So we'll keep our fingers crossed for Election Day. Not sure what we're crossing them for, but hopefully it'll be a result that in the end is better than we might have feared we would see. If you want to chime in real quick, 240-242-5646. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think the Democrats have pushed back hard on the claim by Trump that he's the peace candidate. I think in part because the Democrats are comfortable being the war party. And when it comes to Ukraine, they are more pro-Ukraine war, pro-Russia war than Trump is. And they don't want to lose that mantle. I guess they view it as something they should be proud of. With regard to, so I think that's clear. And I also do agree with Brianna Joy Gray, just to clarify there. I do think that one of the, to some degree, Democratic electeds rein in their worst impulses because they are somewhat afraid of the electorate. They're somewhat afraid if they go too far to the right in certain areas, they will face consequences at the ballot box. If Harris wins running as a full-blown genocider, which is what she's run as, right? I mean, she said there are going to be no changes. She said that over and over, there'll be no changes. The people of Palestine recognized that's who she is. If she runs on the platform that we're not going to do anything differently than we've done, and she wins, then there's no pressure on Democrats. Then they just say, hey, this is the policy you voted for. This is the policy that the people of Michigan, she wins Michigan, the people in Michigan voted for me to continue down the same road. So yeah, I definitely fear that a unconstrained Democratic Party could do untold damage. I get exactly where Brianna Joy Gray is coming from. Okay, this story, we're moving right along. We're almost through the hour, and I may go a little long, but I'll be able to continue tomorrow as well, obviously. But this story kind of getting a lot of attention. I got an email from a friend of the show this morning, who I really appreciate, keeping me in their thoughts, and I've seen other pundits cover this as well after I got this. But so I saw this and I was like, oh, that's interesting. The European Greens call for Stein to step down. And my first thought was, well, that's because they're not as far to the left. They're actually more of a mainstream party now. They've gotten a little taste of power in Europe. They have electeds. They have some influence. I think in Germany, the foreign minister may be a Green, and they have that power, and power does corrupt. It's really, really, really tragic. Here's what the Green Party... Now, is it relevant? Well, I mean, this is a guess as far to the left as it gets in Europe. And you could say, well, then how could we be farther to the left than Europe? Well, one answer is, in Europe, the Green Party is viable. They do win elections now and again. They do have electeds. We don't with our Green Party. So our farthest to the left is the Democratic Party, which isn't even probably as far to the left as the Greens, but maybe. It depends on the issue, of course, depends on the issue. This is from the Green Party call for Stein to step down. Trump has promised they start with social, they start with identity politics issues, they start with abortion. By the way, the abortion issue is definitely helping Harris, and that may be why she wins. We talked about how women are disproportionately voting early compared to men. More women are voting, a higher percentage. And they always are more women than men that vote, but now there really are more women than men. So that helps Stein. Sorry, that helps Harris, not Stein. Trump has promised he will extend abortion bans. So, of course, they lead with that, deny LGBTQ. So it's identity politics, it's social justice. I don't think, by the way, abortion is identity politics. It's healthcare, but it's an issue that definitely cleaves along sex and gender lines. Deport migrants en masse, which, by the way, Harris, Biden maybe haven't been deported, but their treatment of them, of immigrants, has been bad too. And then they bring up ultra-conservative politicians, Putin, Orban, and Bolsonaro, who is out of power. My first thought is, why do we have these ultra-right politicians in power? Such as, well, Putin's a little bit of a different story, but certainly Orban. I mean, Putin was a member of the Communist Party. But why Orban? Because the liberal elites have consistently betrayed workers in Europe and in the United States. And working people are desperate for any alternative, even if it's a fascist. Any change. In 2008, Hope and Change won when a Democrat used that as a slogan. But the Democrat who ran on hope and change didn't bring any change. No real meaningful change. Did not devolve power and wealth down. It was the same old, same old. Same new boss is the same as the old boss under Obama in the end. More war under Obama. More, quote, free, unquote, trade deals. More drilling, more consumption of oil, gas, more militarization of police. That all happened under Obama. When liberal elites like Obama, Harvard-educated lawyer, when elites like Obama betray poor, struggling, working people under the banner of liberalism, they will embrace tyrants. They will embrace demagogues. They will embrace right-wing populists like Trump. And I can't understand for the life of me how the Euro Greens don't get that. The Euro Greens have real issues here. They're not a peace party, clearly. They're all in favor of the Ukraine war, which again, it shows they've lost their thread. They've lost the thread because people like Orban got elected on a pro-peace platform. So this is a news release from last month. They're so excited we got to meet Zelensky. And we will support Ukraine. We will support endless war with Russia for as long as it takes. Jill Stein has a great response to that. We'll get to it in just a moment. In fact, we'll get to it right now. Green Party responds to Euro Greens. Euro Greens have swallowed the myth that Stein, first of all, they're saying, well, because the theory that the Euro Greens present, the assumption is we need to defeat Trump, and Stein hurts our efforts to defeat Trump, so therefore Stein should pull out. And Stein's saying, well, wait a second. The people who vote for me weren't going to vote for Harris anyway, which is certainly in my case true. I wasn't going to vote for Harris even if Stein weren't on the ballot. And I wouldn't have voted for her if I lived in Pennsylvania. That's one of the defenses of the Stein voter are sometimes, well, I live in a dark blue or I live in a dark red state, so it doesn't matter. But if I lived in a purple state, then I would vote, I'd hold my nose. And I've heard that argument. If people would just do that, it's fine. Well, then it's a meaningless vote. Then you're only voting for the Green Party candidate when it doesn't matter, when it's not going to have any impact. And that's ridiculous. If you believe she's the best candidate, and if you believe the other candidates are unacceptable, as I do, then you vote for her, period. Especially when they're both unacceptable, and they're both unacceptably almost equally bad, although in slightly different ways. Jill Stein says, yeah, you've swallowed the myth that my voters would have voted for the Democrat. That's not true. They're not. They recognize just how bad Democrats are. So I'm not costing Harris any votes because she wouldn't have gotten my votes anyway. And she goes on to tell that their feedback we receive is they're not going to vote for either Trump or Harris, but instead we're voting for her. I'm voting for her. Her voters are appalled by U.S. aid for Israel's ethnic cleansing and extermination of civilians. You don't want to call that genocide, call it ethnic cleansing and extermination. Well, and they say who favors more aid for genocide, or who hesitates to call for a ceasefire, which certainly does describe both Harris and Trump. So exactly right. It's not it's not like her voters are sort of drawing lots between Stein and Harris. They're like, no, Harris is not acceptable. That's why we're voting for Stein. And then I love this because Stein calls out those Euro Greens and says, hey, wait, your values aren't the same as ours anyway. You're not pro-peace anyway. You're not pro-life anyway. I'm going to recapture pro-life. They're not pro-life. They might be pro-abortion, they might be pro-choice, but when it comes to stopping war, when it comes to ecocide, when it comes to genocide, no. We already went through this. Eurogreens support endless proxy war with Russia, no matter how bad it is for the environment, no matter how many people are killed. They're for it. And that's terrible for the environment. Nord Stream pipeline was blown up. It's terrible for the environment. Biden expanded LNG, liquefied natural gas, dramatically in the hopes of exporting it to Europe to make up for the loss of natural gas from Russia. Terrible for the environment. And with regard to the Eurogreen support for Ukraine, what Stein says is spot on. We're not siding with Putin. We want peace. We believe in negotiations, which the U.S. under Biden-Harris has completely refused to engage in. So, I mean, there's no question, but Stein completely owns them in that argument, in that back and forth, in that dialogue. All right, that's going to do it. Tomorrow's the election. I do hope you'll vote. I'll talk more about some of the same topics that we're going over today. As I said, the prognostication will continue until the election is over, which presumably, Wednesday, unless we don't have an answer Wednesday. But I don't know. We might not. It looks awful close, doesn't it? I'll end you with this thought. Those of you who are more of you, I'm sure, support Harris than Trump or Stein. I'll leave with the thought. I think those of you who support Harris, you'll probably be happy.